YouTube, what is going on? Welcome back to another Identity 5 video. And at long last, we finally have the Season 20 Survivor tier list. I know this took a while for me to finish. A lot of editing, a lot of staying up really late for multiple days trying to finish it and just not getting it done. But finally, we have the Season 20 Survivor tier list. I hope that you guys find this video enjoyable and helpful. Okay, so now we're going to go over essentially the criteria for each tier, for what it takes for each character to meet each specific tier that they're in. And we do have 6 tiers for today. We have D tier, C tier, B, A-, A+, and S tier. And essentially for D tier is like the characters that are the most unviable, essentially the worst characters in the game, characters that that'll never really be used in competitive tournaments ever, and to be honest, never should be used in rank either, especially in mid to higher tiers. You should never just see these characters get played because they're just so weak and underwhelming that it's easy for hunters to deal with them, and they're just never going to be... you could just win so much more often if you played higher tier characters. The next tier is C tier, and C tier characters are essentially... These characters are okay as like a one-of. Sometimes in competitive tournaments, under very rare circumstances, you may see one of these characters come out in specific situations. In rank, I wouldn't recommend them, especially again in mid to high tier. Would not recommend them. They don't fit well into a lot of team comps. It's again very specific situations against specific hunters in tournaments. In rank, they're just not very good, so I would not recommend them in rank at all. The next tier is B tier. These are characters that are... these characters are good as a one-of in a ranked team comp, and also a one-of in a tournament team comp. Again, situational, but they're more likely to be used than the C tier ones because they are a little bit stronger and better against more hunters. They have better strengths overall. The next tier is A- tier. These are characters that any of these can be used in rank, and in tournaments these are also strong in rounds 2 to 3. Usually not in round 1. You usually want to utilize the A+ and S tier characters in round 1 before they get banned. But they are good in later rounds, and they are strong in pretty much any ranked team comp. The next tier is A+ tier. These are some of the best characters in the game. These are strong in all rounds of tournaments. You can play as many of these in rank comps as you want. They're very strong in rank. And then S tier is obviously the best characters in the game. These are the most banned characters, the most used characters in any rank comp and any tournament comp. They are the best characters in the game and should be utilized the most out of pretty much any character. And they are the best against the majority of the hunters. In comparison to some lower tier characters, which may be weak against certain hunters, these characters are strong against most hunters. Okay, so moving on, without further ado, let's get into our first tier. I don't want to be here all day because usually that's what happens with these tier lists. So apologies for that. We'll try to not take too long in this. But first tier we have is D tier, and the first character in D tier is Thief. Now, Thief is just on these lower tier characters. We're not going to spend too much time talking about them just because it's pretty obvious why they're in the lower tiers, but I will explain a little bit. So for Thief, it's basically... Thief gets countered by what we call moonwalking, which is, as a hunter, if you have a drag and drop ability, you can continue to walk forward, but make it so your camera angle looks behind you. For example, let's say you're a sculptor, right? And you hold down your statue, you can walk backwards while holding your statue in front of you. You can walk backwards and make it so that the flashlight won't work. And then you can just walk up to the thief. Even if they're holding the flashlight, it won't register because you're not looking into it. And then you can just turn around and smack them and get a free hit. So that's the biggest problem with thieves. Any hunter that's a drag and drop ability, feaster, geisha, violinist, sculptor, bonbon. I mean, there's other ones I'm not thinking of. But any hunter that has a drag and drop ability can simply just counter Thief. He gets countered by way too many characters, and that's why he is D tier. Of course, you do have the drop flashlights, which really don't do much. Hunters can simply just walk around them. The only place they're actually effective is if it's in a place where a hunter has to vault a window. They can be pretty strong, and you can get a short stun, but it's really not even that long of a stun to a point where it's even worth it. Just there are characters that have just better stunning abilities or better transition abilities that are stronger than the Thief's drop flashlight. So moving on to the next character in D tier, which is Lucky Guy. And Lucky Guy is just really underwhelming because he's inconsistent. And a lot of what makes characters good in this game is consistency. This game is already very Survivor-sided, right? And a lot of you know that. The game's very Survivor-sided with Cypher Rush. So having an inconsistent character just removes your Survivor-sided aspect. Just play a consistent character and you'll win most of the time as long as you have good teammates, right? So... with Lucky Guy, your items are not always guaranteed. So your items are not going to... So there's a luck factor in getting those items. That's why he's called Lucky Guy. You don't want luck factor as a survivor. You want that consistency, which Lucky Guy does not have. Additionally, the time it takes for Lucky Guy to search a chest means that you're losing Cypher Rush. Of course, you do have the package at the beginning of the game, which you can get an instant item, which is not bad, but again, not always guaranteed. So that's the biggest problem with Lucky Guy, is that he's just inconsistent, and his Cypher Rush is slow because he has to stop to search chests if he wants to add more items to his inventory. And on top of that, Lucky Guy's flare gun, which is technically the best item in the game, is not as strong as a Coordinator's. Coordinator's flare gun stun is actually 30% longer than a Lucky Guy's. Lucky Guy's flare gun stun is really short, and it gives the hunter too much time to recover quickly. And if they have Rage or Desperate Fight, which is our ability that lets them recover from stuns quicker, then the stun is just going to be so short and not worth it. I mean, sure, Lucky Guy can get other items like elbow pads or perfumes, but again, it's not guaranteed, and sometimes you'll just get unlucky with your items, and it'll cause you to lose games, and you cannot take that risk in a tournament setting, and that is why Lucky Guy is a D tier character. And also in rank. You also don't want to take that risk in rank. Just play consistent characters that can promote Cypher Rush right away because they already have their items and don't have to rely on luck to get what they need. The next character in D tier is the new one, which is Weeping Clown. And unfortunately, Weeping Clown is, believe it or not, one of the worst characters NetEase has released in a while. I think Alien had Weeping Clown a little bit higher, but I'm going to be honest with you guys. I agree with most of the things Alien puts, but I can't say Weeping Clown is B tier. He's just really bad. I think also Alien's tier list criteria is a little bit different as well than mine. But in reality, Weeping Clown is one of the worst characters in the game. The reason why Weeping Clown is so weak is because he just gets countered by too many abilities. And we talk about characters being lower, like in the tier list, are usually ones that get countered by more hunters. And Weeping Clown gets countered by a lot. He gets countered by Black Form Wu Chang Bell. He gets countered by White Form Charge Attack because of how long the hitbox is. He gets countered by a Sculptor statue. If he gets even chipped by, if he gets grazed by the statue at all, it'll knock him out of his rocket dash. He gets his dash stopped by Bonbon Bombs. He gets his dash stopped by, I don't know, anything that can essentially chip. Violinist Notes, Axe Boy Flames, Feaster Tentacles. There's just so many things that counter his ability where it's just like, it just makes him so weak. And on top of that, even if you're playing a hunter that doesn't counter, like if you're playing Geisha, for example, all you have to do is throw a butterfly on the clown, follow him around, and as soon as his rocket runs out, just dash on him and get hit. Or even if you don't have a hunter that's not dashing, you can just follow his rocket dash is actually so slow that you're only slightly faster than the hunter. So the hunter can easily just trail behind them, and as soon as they catch up, just get a free hit on them when their rocket runs out. The only hunter he really kind of counters is like Bloody Queen, because if you mirror, then you can rocket dash away. But at that point, why would you not just play another character that has better transition abilities? For example, Patient would just be so much better. Patient is basically can do the same thing as Weeping Clown, but he has no debuffs at all, and he's just a more consistent kiter. He's just a stronger kiter. And Weeping Clown, sure, you can argue, oh, Weeping Clown has the stun with the rocket, but the stun is so short. It's like an Enchantress stun. It's so short that it's just not even viable. Okay, so you pick up a survivor, Weeping Clown comes in with the dash. You can't even get an instant balloon stun because his dash takes a second to charge and throw. So, you stun the hunter, the survivor gets dropped because they're stunned, and the hunter just immediately hits them again because the stun's so short. So that's the biggest problem with Clown, is that his kiting is not really, in reality, against most hunters, is not that strong, and his harassing is really, really weak. And it's just not worth it to play. And there's just better characters that do the same things as him and just do it more effectively. Forward, Patient, Batter. All these stunning characters, they just do it better than Clown. And he's just too underwhelming, and that's what makes him a D tier survivor. Okay, moving on to the next tier, which is C tier. And the first character in C tier is Lawyer. Now I know a lot of you guys are going to be like, there's always a lot of controversy with Lawyer because for some reason, so many people think Lawyer is underrated. And I understand why. On paper, Lawyer actually seems very good, right? When he gets hit, he gets a Veterans bonus, which gives him a really nice speed boost. He can see the hunter at the start of the map, or he can see the hunter at any point with his map, which is really strong. And he can't get terror shocked, right? So if you think about it, that should be really strong, right? But the reason why it's not, and I'll explain why, is that one, if you, in a tournament setting, if you are in 4-person, or in rank setting, if you have 4-person VC and you know your spawns, if you and your teammates know your spawns, which top tier, Lawyer may be good if you're newer to the game. Lawyer is actually a good character if you're newer to the game, and in lower to mid tiers, because maybe you don't know your spawns, you're worried you're gonna get terror shocked, whatever. then lawyer is actually strong. But once you get to mid to higher tiers, lawyer is really weak. Because higher tier survivors, even in 4-person VC, they will know their spawns, and they'll be able to communicate with their teammates where the hunter spawns, so you don't need to have a map to see where they spawn at the start of the match. So you won't even need that. And then you can argue, okay, well, what if you want to know which direction the hunter's going? Well, good survivors at top tiers, they'll know where the hunter is going based off where they spawn. For example, if they spawned at, I don't know, if they spawned at top broken, the top breakable area near red carpet, on red church, you pretty much know the hunter's going to go straight towards the bottom breakables and shack, because those are weak hiding areas. Hunters will naturally go straight to weak hiding areas where more survivors spawn, which as a survivor team, you know that. And you could argue, well, what if they go to a different area? Well, if they go to a different area, they're going to a strong kiting area, and the survivors can kite easily there, and you can 3-cyber kite easily. So you don't really need that map if you have good communication and you have good game sense when knowing your key spawns as a high tier survivor. And again, don't feel bad if you don't know your complete spawns, guys. It takes a while to learn them. It took me a long time, but once you get them down, you don't need that lawyer map. And then there's the argument of, okay, you can't get terror shocked. Well, if you're kiting, you should never get terror shocked. I'll be honest with you guys. You should never get terror shocked. You should always know Hunter's hitboxes. You should always know when to vault. You should never be getting terror shocked. And on top of that, you can argue, well, you can't get terror shocked on rescue. Well, at that point, why would you not just use a better rescue character? Why would you not just use Mercenary, who has 3 elbow pads, and even Mercenary does get terror shocked and can still make the rescue? Or why would you not use a character like Ford, who has a football? Lawyer may be immune to terror shocks, but he's not immune to getting stuffed. If you're a good camping hunter, like a Bonbon, you can just chip them twice with bombs and then just hit them and they're dead. Hit the lawyer and they're dead. Or a Violinist can note them, hit them and they're dead. Axeboy can hit them with a flame and then hit them and they're dead. And there's just nothing you can do. Whereas something like a Mercenary can still make that rescue. Or as a Forward can try to stun the hunter with a football and still make that rescue. So, and I'm talking about a lawyer a lot, but if you ask any tiered player in China, any tier player, even low tiers in China, they will tell you Lawyer is a really bad character. And I do agree with them. Lawyer is a really bad character. AC underrated? Not really. He's really not underrated. Maybe slightly, but not enough to make him higher than C tier. And hopefully this explanation of Lawyer is good, because for some reason a lot of people still believe he's strong, but I promise you guys he isn't once you get to higher tiers. If you're newer to the game, he's a very strong character, but once you get to high tiers, he's very, very weak. And that's what makes Lawyer overall a C tier character. The next character, okay, we're sorry we took so long on that. We're going to try to not take too long. On the rest of these, I just had to explain Lawyer because I know there's a lot of controversy around whether he's good or not. Okay, moving on to the next character in C tier, which is Magician. And Magician used to be alright because he was a good tight kiter. Like, he'd counter Geisha, he'd counter stuff like Wu Chang, but he still is strong against Geisha. But there's just more hunters. There's a larger hunter pool in terms of what hunters are viable that Magician isn't really strong against anymore. For example, he's weak against Sculptor. The chips make it so you can't use your illusion for about 1 second after you take a chip. Bon Bob's the same thing. Even Dream Witch, you can't really counter a patroller as Magician even with your illusion, because the hunter can still see the patroller even if you're invisible. And Breaking Wheel, sure, you can illusion, but if you illusion and still run into a trap, you're still getting trapped anyways. So while Magician may be good against some hunters, he's weaker against too many of the good ones, and that's what makes him C tier. Also, when you use your illusion as Magician, you can still see the Magician's footsteps. So good hunters will watch for that. They'll see them illusion, and then they'll watch for the footsteps, and they'll just follow the Magician and get a free hit on them anyways. So in reality, Magician's illusion is not very strong. The only thing he's really good against is long-range Bloody Queen mirrors. And besides that, he's just not really good. I mean, sure, he can't get terror shocked anymore, which is fine, but against most hunters, it doesn't really matter. Even if you illusion, there's still a good chance you're going to get hit. With comparison like Perfumer, you can at least have a better chance of not getting hit by that hit. So yeah, so that's kind of what makes Magician C tier. The one thing going from that he does have is when he gets rescued, he can turn invisible for a few seconds when he gets rescued, and you can sometimes break the hunter's ankles that way. But in reality, good hunters again will watch for the footsteps and just see the direction of the Magician and catch up to him that way, and that's what makes him a C tier character. I'm gonna drink a little bit of water so I don't lose my breath. Okay, so the next character in C tier is Gardener. Now Gardener is she did get that buff where she a little while back where when you can get that bubble If you stand still for a few seconds, you can get a bubble for, I think it's, if you stand still for 2 seconds, you get a bubble for 5 seconds, I believe is what it is. But in reality, that's just really weak. I mean, the problem is there's so many chip hunters, Bonbon Sculptor, they can knock you out of standing still. Good hunters will constantly pressure you to a point where they're just not going to allow you to get that bubble. The best thing Gardner has going for them, is that they have a 50-second bubble at the start of the match. So if they get found first, then they technically can take a free hit for the first 50 seconds, which is actually kind of strong. But after that, Gardner is really, really, really weak. She has no kiting abilities other than the bubble, which, again, good hunters top hunters will always pressure you and never allow you to get that bubble off. The only time you're ever going to be allowed to get it off is if you're hiding, get a bubble off, and then go in for a rescue. And Gardner can be decent at rescuing because of that. But again, chip hunters can just counter that easily. And you have to, since your bubble only lasts 5 seconds, you have to get super close to the chair, get your bubble, and then go in for the save. The hunter sees you coming in at any point. They're just going to constantly pressure you and not allow you to get that bubble off anyways. So that's why Gardner's kind of just C tier. There's always, there's always the argument of, okay, she can break chairs, that's okay. It wastes a few extra seconds, but you're also really not gaining time because the time it takes for you to break a chest, you're also not really decoding in the process. So in reality, Gardner just doesn't really gain much from any of those things, which is like, okay, it makes the cipher, if a survivor's chaired on a broken chair after it's being fixed, they do die a little bit slower, but it's still not like too strong overall. It gives a little leeway for the rescuer, but again, if you're stopping to go around and break chairs around the map, it means you're not decoding, which means Cypher Rush is being slowed down, which means you're not promoting. Again, Cypher Rush is the most important thing in the game for survivors. So because of these things, Gardner is C tier. She's okay, but she's not as good as some other characters that are higher up, and she's really not viable. She's like okay sometimes in low to mid tier rank, but really not viable in high tier rank. And isn't really viable in tournament gameplay. The next character in C tier is Novelist. Now, Novelist, there's not too much to say about Novelist. The biggest weakness with Novelist is that a big part of the Survivor meta is about transition kiting, making distance between you and the hunter, and Novelist doesn't do that, because when you control the hunter will then control the Novelist, and they'll just use the Novelist to run at you as the hunter, and you gain almost no distance. And then also what good hunters will do is at the 1 second mark before the Novelist switches back with you, they will go into, they'll crouch. They'll put the Novelist in crouch mode. So when they switch back to the hunter's perspective, the hunter will just see the Novelist crouching. The Novelist will then have to switch back to running mode, and they waste a full second before they can start running. And the hunter can easily just hit them. Novelist ability is just so weak. The only good thing Novelist has with that ability is they could potentially walk the hunter into a pallet. Or they could potentially walk the hunter through a Priestess portal. And I mean, that can be okay. But if you as a hunter see that the Novelist is walking in a pallet, you're just going to keep a little bit of distance between you and that pallet, so you can't switch back and get the pallets done, and the hunter can move out of the way in time. So that's why Novelist is really weak, is that controlling the hunter gains you really no distance in reality, and you probably still will get hit anyways. And on top of that, there is the argument, okay, well, what about a second ability where you can switch controls with a survivor? That's not too bad in a tournament in a rank setting. If you have maybe someone's not a weaker kiter and you're a good kiter and you want to kite for them, okay, maybe that's not too bad, right? But in reality, it really doesn't matter too much in tournament, because in tournament, all the players on your entire team should all be very strong, and at that point, you should all just be playing characters with good kiting abilities, like patient hooks or entomologist bees or acrobat or something like that, right? So at that point, it's just not as strong, and that's what makes Novelist a C tier character. The next character in C tier is Wildling. Now, Wildling is not too much to say about Wildling. Wildling is okay in that he's kind of unchaseable. Once you get on the boar as a hunter, you can't really chase them because they're just too fast. But Wildling's decoding is so slow, and his harassing is really bad because you can't instant harass. For example, if you're decoding as a Wildling, someone dies next to you, you have to get on your boar, you have to wait for your rage to accumulate before you can go for harassment. Whereas with something like a forward or a batter, they can instantly just go harass, whereas, again, Wildling can't do that. So that's what makes Wildling kind of meh. That's what makes him kind of just like C tier. His harassing is bad, and also his decoding is very slow. His rescuing is also not great, because there's a 1 second animation where Wildling gets off of his boar, which the hunter can use an ability on you. For example, if you're playing, like, let's take Cowboy, for example, right? If you're playing Exploit against a Wildling, you see them start to get off their board, you can immediately just pull a Fireball on them. They're not going to be able to move in time because there's a 1 second animation as they're getting off their board, and you can just stuff them. Or Violinist with their notes, or something like that, right? And or a Bomb, or a Sculptor statue can get a free chip. So Wildling's just not a great rescuer because of that. Sure, you can get to the chair all the way uninjured because the board will take hits for you. But again, there's a 1 second animation getting out, which is not... getting off a board, which is not as strong. You might as well play something like Gravekeeper, who has increased rescue speed at that point. So because of these things, Wildling is C tier. On top of this, I've also noticed that a lot of Wildling players in NAU don't really play him properly. Wildling is there to decode and rescue sometimes, guys. He's not there to harass the whole game. What a lot of newer Wildling players will do is they'll follow the hunter around the entire match and just harass. And if you're not decoding as the Wildling, it means the Cypher Rush is so bad that you're just losing the game. It's okay to harass at some point, but in reality, Wildling should be decoding most of the time and then harassing sometimes in the late game. You should not be following the hunter around the whole time. Your board doesn't last long enough for that. It's not 90 seconds like it used to be. It's 65, then 55, then 45, then 35. So it's not as good as it used to be. I've also seen some Wildlings not bring borrowed time, which makes no sense whatsoever. I promise you guys, every character should bring borrowed time. And I know some people may be like, oh, you don't need borrowed times. Guys, please bring borrowed time on every character. It is the best ability in the game. Every character in every player in every character in every player in whatever blah 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 in China will always use borrowed time. Every top player in NAU who has competitive experience and has very strong game sense will always bring borrowed time. Doesn't matter the character. I mean, they probably won't be playing Wildling anyways, but borrowed time is the best trait in the game. Always bring, guys. Please, I promise you it's worth it. And yeah, so that's why Wildling is C tier. The next character in C tier is Mind's Eye. Now, Mind's Eye did see a little bit of play. I believe it was in Japan, and I think one match in China as well. And that's why in C tier, you know, we talk about this. C tier is once in a while okay in a certain situation. Mind's Eye, once in a while okay in certain situations. But in reality, she's just not too strong because the problem with Mind's Eye is that while her decoding may be incredibly fast and you can see through walls, there's just a trait that hunters can bring that counter, and that's teleporting quenching effect. There's a on the Persona web quenching effect allows you to see all survivors after 50 seconds. And then hunters will just bring teleport, and they'll just teleport on the Mind's Eye and then kill them really quickly because their kiting is so weak. And I mean, sure, you know, you can say you can see through walls, that's pretty good, but it doesn't matter because you throw pallets so slow and you vault so slow, so your kiting is naturally going to be very suboptimal as a Mind's Eye player. And while her Cypher Rush may be very good, the problem is Mind's Eye is you have to hide at the start of the match. You have to hide at the start of the match for a long period of time to make sure the hunter chases somebody else. And if you're hiding for that long, you're literally just nullifying your entire ability. Your entire ability is to decode super fast as quickly as possible and get through ciphers as quickly as possible. But if you're hiding for a large part of the start of the match, then you're just preventing your ability from being activated. Your main ability, which is decoding. And you're just not able to promote that Cypher Rush like you'd prefer to. And if you opt to not hide, then there's a good chance a good hunter will be able to seek you out and find you early on. And then you have to kite versus Mind's Eye. If you go down versus Mind's Eye, then that's really bad because then the Cypher Rush is slowed down so much. Because now your main decoder is sitting on the rocket chair. And this is why Mechanic is stronger, guys. And I know some people are like, Mechanic's not that good anymore. Mechanic is still good, guys, I promise you. This is why Mechanic is stronger, because the Mechanic gets found first and her bot's in play. Sure, Mechanics can go down quickly just like Mind's Eye because of her slow vaulting speed, slow pallet throwing speed. But Mechanic can still decode an entire Cypher machine for free with the bot while sitting on the rocket chair, which is something Mind's Eye cannot do. And that's why Mind's Eye is C tier, because her kiting is weak. And her ability of decoding may be strong, but her kiting is just too suboptimal, and she gets countered by teleport plus quenching effect. Okay, moving on to the next tier, which is B tier, and the first character in B tier is First Officer. Now, First Officer is a subpar rescuer. Because all the hunter has to do, and there's not really much to explain about First Officer, all the hunter has to do is just swing in the air. If you see a First Officer using their watch, you see them coming in, just swing at the air over and over and over, and they can't get past you, because you'll just hit them. And that's the problem with First Officer, is that he literally just gets countered by swinging in the air. Also, you know, hunters that have big hitboxes like Wu Ching and Feaster can easily hit them, and chip hunters can also hit them, like Sculptor with full presence. Bon can spam a bunch of bombs and hit you, and it's just not too strong. Also, Breaking Wheel can snap you out of your pocket watch form. So because of these things, First Officer just kind of can struggle. against some of these top hunters, and he's just not a great right. There's just better rescuers overall. Yeah, I mean, sure, first officer has some upsides. You know, he has the ability to use that tide turner effect. If he does get hit in pocket watch, you get 5 seconds of tide turner, which you can still make a rescue. You know, if you were to get stuffed, you can still make the rescue, but you're still getting double hit in the process, which is not too strong because you're going to be going down anyways, and the Cypher Rush will be slowed down. You know, yes, he does have 20% longer on the rocket share, which is also kind of nice, but it's just not, it doesn't really matter because you're never going to chase first officer first anyways as a hunter. It's just really not worth it for the most part. And then finally, you know, there's the argument of, oh, well, you know, when a first officer is rescued when they rescue someone off the chair, then that person also looks like first officer, so you don't know which is which. Well, the problem is, if they looked exactly like officer, he might actually be pretty strong. But the problem is you can see the items. Look closely at the person that was the first officer and the person that was rescued. The first officer will be holding the pocket watch, and for example, say you rescue a mind's eye, they'll still be holding their cane. You can see that they're you can see the item that was pulled off. You just look for the item and you'll be able to tell the difference between them. So that's the biggest problem with first officer, is that, you know, you can see these things as how you can see who's holding what items, and you can just go for the person that was rescued that way. And they can't really rebound kite. So that's what makes first officer a B tier survivor. There's just better rescuers to go with. The next character in B tier is Cowboy. Now, Cowboy's a pretty fun character. The problem is he does have a 10% slower decoding, which is not as good. He basically does the same things as Patient in terms of the transition kiting, except he decodes slower, and he also needs to lasso pallets and ciphers, whereas Patient can hook pretty much anything. Now, there's the argument, well, you know, Cowboy can harass, which is true, he can harass, but his harassing is just very weak, unfortunately. It's very easy to just drop the survivor and play around Cowboy that way. You can also just break line of sight, walk behind walls, and the Cowboy can't even lasso. And with Patient, you can also hook yourself onto really god kiting areas, whereas Cowboy can only basically pull themselves forward with their lasso to a pallet or a cipher machine in front of them. They do get a small speed boost, which is nice. You can also lasso over the hunter, but in reality, it's just not that strong. Cowboy's just not really worth it overall. He's not a great harasser. He's not a great kiter. There's really not much to say about him besides that. Yeah, I mean, he's just kind of, he can transition kite, which is pretty strong, but there's a reason why we don't see Cowboy get used in competitive situations, because he just is too underwhelming with his kiting, and his harassing isn't strong enough, and that's what makes him a B tier survivor. The next survivor in B tier is Barmaid. Now, Barmaid's would be a lot lower because she's just very weak, but she actually counters 200, well, kind of one in particular, and then also is decent against another. She hard counters Dream Witch. She's really good against Dream Witch because the time it takes, because once you take a hit as Barmaid, you use your drink, it takes the Dream Witch too long to patroller you, and then hit you again before the drink runs out. It's before the drink heals. The drink will pretty much always heal before you have time to patroller and then hit the survivor again, and then Barmaid can take up to 3 hits, which is really strong against Dream Witch. She can also be pretty good against Bloody Queen, because you can force out an extra mirror or blink, but the problem with Barmaid is she gets countered by the most common ability in the game, which is blink. If you take a hit as a survivor playing Barmaid, and the hunter has their blink online, all they have to do is just blink you right after, and you'll never get your heal off. So Barmaid gets countered by the most common trait in the game, which is blink. At that point, why would you not play Psychologist? Barmaid is too risky. She's too inconsistent, whereas Psychologist is more guaranteed, because Psychologist is guaranteed 3 hits, because even if you get blinked right after you take your first hit, you can still take an extra one as Psychologist, whereas Barmaid is not guaranteed. So Barmaid is too inconsistent, and again, we talk about consistency making characters not as strong. The only reason why Barmaid's not lower for being as inconsistent as she is that she counters Dream Witch, and Dream Witch is the best hunter in the game currently. So that's what makes Barmaid B tier, is that yes, she's inconsistent, so she's not very good, but she does counter the best hunter in the game. That's pretty much the only one she counters for the most part, but she is B tier because of that. Now, she does have her speed drink, which is not bad, but in reality, the speed boost is so short, it's better to have, better to have a hunter or a survivor with transitioning abilities like a Patient hook, or Entomologist bees, or Acrobat bomb, or something like that, which is just better overall. Okay, so the next character in B tier is Enchantress. Now, Enchantress, I think I had a little bit lower in one of my previous tier lists, but I did move her up a little bit since the previous ones, is that Enchantress is not too bad. I mean, she has the ability to be strong against ship hunters, for example, Sculptor and Bonbon. It's easy for her to farm stuns. A lot of enchantresses will build a doctor build, which allows them to heal their teammates quicker. So they can heal them quicker, and then when the teammates take a hit, then she gets an extra stun off of that, which is pretty strong. So Enchantress is a good late game kiter, which can be very strong in some instances. But the biggest problem with late game kiting is that the way you win games as survivors is first kite. First kite is one of the biggest advantages you have as a survivor team. If you have a good first kite, there's a good chance you'll win the game. So having a good first kite is really important. And Enchantress is not made for having a good first kite because she doesn't start out with any stuns at all. She has no ability. You have to rock kite as you start out. Now some people argue, well, I'm good enough to rock kite until I get my stuns. Well, the problem is once you get to high tiers and play against good hunters, if you have no abilities to kite with at all in the early game, good hunters will always get quick hits on you. Good hunters will always get quick hits on you in high tier, and that's what makes Enchantress not as strong because she has a weak early game kiting. Yes, her rebound kite potential is strong, and her late game kiting potential is strong, but her early game is very, very weak, and that's what makes her a B tier survivor. She can harass a little bit when she has 3 stacks. Single stack harassment is usually not that good because the hunter will immediately just hit the survivor again and they'll get free presence off of it. But 3 stack harassment isn't terrible. And it also can be used for rescues in some instances, but yeah, in reality, it's just not too strong. Again, Desperate Fight is a common trait hunters will bring that can counter Enchantress's stuns. It makes them last so much shorter every time she uses one. And yeah, again, that's what makes Enchantress B tier. The next survivor in B tier is Doctor. Now, Doctor did recently get a buff where if she takes a chip hit, she gets a small speed boost, which is actually pretty strong, considering that Doctor used to struggle against these chip hunters before, because Doctor is built to take a hit, potentially get a heal off, so she goes down to 25% damage, take another basic hit, and then take a third basic hit and go down. But if they have a chip in there, it's hard to get a double chip heal off, a double quarter damage heal off. And a hunter can also just chip you again and make you half health and kill you that way. So Doctor's is not good against chip hunters, but once she got that buff, it made her a little bit better. Still not really viable. The reason why Doctor is in B tier is that she can still do stuff against chip hunters with that buff. She's also not bad against Dream Witch and Photographer. Those 2 hunters she kind of counters them with. Also Mad Eyes as well. But besides that, she just kind of she struggles against most hunters. Doctor's main strategy essentially is to camp pallets to try to get the heal off, but camping pallets is really bad because there's a lot of hunters who have abilities that are pallet camping. For example, Sculptor can just place a statue outside the pallet where you're trying to camp it. Bomb can drop a bunch of bombs near the pallet. Breaking Wheel is good against Doctor because you can just one-shot them and their heal's pointless. All these meta, Violinists can throw a note at the pallet. Feaster can put a tentacle on the other side. There's just so many, these meta hunters just kind of counter. Nide can loop the entire area anyways. These meta hunters just counter Doctor, and that's what makes her B tier. But, again, she is good against Dream Witch, which is the best hunter in the game. She's pretty good against Photo, who's not really meta, but he is used quite a lot in rank. So she's not a bad character, but she's not really strong in top tiers. She's pretty good in, low to mid tiers because hunters will be scared to walk through pallets, so you can easily just pallet camp and get your heal off. Like high tier hunters will mind game so much better, and it's so much easier for them to play around the Doctor's abilities. So of pallet camping. And again, pallet camping is not strong in top tiers. It's always about pallet spamming, transition kite for the most part. So that's what makes Doctor a B tier survivor. She's good if you're newer to. She's a good newer to the game character, but once you get higher and higher up, she'll become significantly weaker, and you'll be forced to transition into playing stronger tiered characters. The next character in B tier is Female Dancer. Now, Dancer is actually a pretty fun character, and she's actually good on some maps. She's pretty good on Arms Factory because you can drop all those music boxes inside Factory and you can easily just loop Factory forever until the hunter breaks them. And she's also decent on 2-story maps like Ever Slimming Town because when you drop down, you get that 40% speed boost, which is pretty good as well. But the problem is, again, there are hunters that kind of counter her. Like, for example, Patroller Dream, which is kind of Patroller, and there's nothing she can really do against that. Or, or Bon Bon. She's okay, let's put it this way. Dancer is a good tight kiter because she can tight kite around pallets with those fast and slow boxes. But the problem is, The meta is very anti-tight kite. Sculptor statues cancel tight kiting because they just drop statues as you try to tight kite. You take statue hits. Bonbon bombs are preventing, tight kiting. Naiad can just loop the area where you put the boxes, pull back the trident, you're forced to completely just leave the boxes altogether. So a lot of the meta hunters are anti-tight. Oh, Bloody Queen as well can just mirror the box. She doesn't have to go into the boxes. She can just mirror it. Dancer is strong against Geisha. She is actually strong against Geisha. And Geisha is actually a meta hunter right now. So that's actually nice that Dancer's strong against Geisha. But besides that, she struggles against a lot of the meta hunters. And she also is very map specific. She's not good on certain maps. So so because of these things, Dancer is B tier. The slow boxes and fast boxes are fun, and they're fun to mess around with. Again, having the twirl ability as well is fun to mess around with, but she's just not strong enough currently. I think she could be better if the meta changes, but right now she's just a B tier survivor. The next survivor in B tier, and I know there's gonna be some people who are gonna be mad about this, but I promise you guys, this is where this character belongs, and that is the oh my god, I say thief. That is Prisoner. So Prisoner, a Prisoner is B tier because the biggest problem with Prisoner is that his Cypher Rush is not as strong as a decoding type character's Cypher Rush is supposed to be. He gets a small Cypher boost when, decoding boost when he's connected to a Cypher machine. But besides that, he's decoding. You lose a lot of It's not like you can decode 2 Cypher machines at the same speed. That would be broken, right? You lose progress when you connect to these Cypher machines, which, it's pretty good as a Prisoner that you're able to connect Cypher machines from across the map and do ciphers from across the map and finish them. That's actually pretty nice, right? That's pretty neat. But the problem is that you're really not gaining too much cipher decoding time while you're doing this. Now, there is people who argue Prisoner's a better kiter than, something like Mechanic, so why would I not just play Prisoner? But the thing is, what you guys have to realize is that decoders aren't meant to be good kiters. They're not supposed to kite. They're supposed to decode efficiently. And they're supposed to be able to decode without while being chased. If you can decode while being chased or while rescuing or while being on chair, that makes you a really strong decoder. But Prisoner can't use his ability like that, his decoding ability, in any of those situations. So, for example, Mechanic, while being chased, can, she can check her bot once in a while being chased. While rescuing, she can make sure her bot's decoding. And while on chair, she can make sure her bot's decoding. Or while on the ground, she can make sure her bot's decoding. Whereas with Prisoner, if you're in any of those situations, you're just not going to be able to decode. I mean, there is the argument, you can make a connection while kiting, which, you can do if you do it super quickly. But if you're stopping to make a connection, you're not transition kiting, which means you're not gaining distance, and you're also not really promoting Cypher Rush too much. Because if someone's sending progress as a non-prisoner, they're really just not gaining any decoding progress as it is. So it's kind of just pointless at that point. So so Prisoner's not a bad character. He's not a bad late round character in tournaments, and he's not bad in rank if you're too worried that you're not going to do well with Mechanic, because Mechanic is hard to play. But in reality, he's not as strong as some of the other decoding characters, and that's what makes him a B tier survivor. The next survivor in B tier is Embalmer. Now Embalmer did get a buff where, when he goes through the coffin, he does get a 7-second bubble where he can't be injured, and then also has that 15 seconds of the Tide Turner as well, which is pretty strong. But the problem is Embalmer gets countered by, again, meta survivor or meta hunters. Breaking Wheel can go into wheel form, catch up to him easily. Dream Witch, if they have a leech on him, the leech will just follow him to where his coffin is and then can down him after that. Wu Chang, Naiad, Bloody Queen, all these hunters can catch up to the coffin way too easily. And that's kind of what makes him B tier. He is strong against specific hunters. He's good against Bonbon and Sculptor in particular, because those are slower hunters that are good at camping, and you can play around their good camping by essentially self-rescuing with the coffin. And that's what makes Embalmer pretty good against some of those hunters. He's good on large maps. I would never recommend, guys, never play on Embalmer pretty much on Arms Factory or Red Church. Those maps are terrible for him because they're so small. It's easy for the hunter to catch up to the coffin. So I would never recommend really ever playing Embalmer in those maps. But he is pretty good in like Moonlit River Park, Chinatown, Ever Sleeping, Lakeside. Those bigger maps, which it takes the hunter more time to catch up to you, can be very strong. And because of this, Embalmer is high B tier. He's not quite A- tier, but he is a decent character in some instances against certain hunters. I don't really recommend him in rank because you don't know what hunter you're going against in rank. You could be playing against an Embalmer counter, but he is good in tournaments if you know what hunter you're going. Like if you know it's going to be a Sculptor, if you know it's going to be a Bonbon, then Embalmer is a good character for that. So that's what makes Embalmer a high B tier character. The next character in B tier is Perfumer. Now Perfumer is not too bad, but if you I know there's gonna be some people that think Perfumer is better than she actually is, but I want you guys to think about Paul Blums, right? For those of you who know Paul Blums and B4U, right? Paul Blums is arguably the best Perfumer player on the server. Okay, so you have to look at Paul Blums. Does he play Perfumer anymore? No, he doesn't. He hardly ever plays Perfumer in rank, and he hardly ever plays her in tournament. I think we saw a player in one tournament situation in COA qualifiers, and that was it. That was literally it, right? He hardly ever plays her anymore. He plays her sometimes in the later rounds, but that's it. So that's why Perfumer's just fallen out of favor, because there's just better kiting characters. There's just better rescuing characters. Perfumer's not a bad rescuer, not a bad kiter, but there's just other characters that just do it better. Now, Perfumer is pretty good against Bloody Queen. So let's get something straight. Bloody Queen is a very common meta hunter. Perfumer counters Bloody Queen very hard, actually. Because it's one of the few characters that can actually kite out mirror images for free. And that's what makes Perfumer in high B tier. She actually counters a very strong hunter in Bloody Queen. She also counters Geisha, because any single hit hunter she's strong against, but Geisha and Bloody Queen in particular, very, very good. However, she's not actually that strong against Breaking Wheel. Sure, she can perfume off spikes, but what good Breaking Wheels will do is they'll roll over the Perfumer. As soon as she perfumes back, the Breaking Wheel will immediately just get out of wheel form and just smack the Perfumer and get a free hit. And Perfumer's perfume is now on cooldown because she just perfumed back, so she can't, she can't perfume that hit, and she's now at half health immediately, and now the perfumes are just not as strong at all, right? So that's the biggest problem. She is pretty good on 2-story maps because you can perfume and drop down holes or drop down windows or something, and then if the hunter goes down after, you can perfume back up. And that's not too bad, but in reality, Perfumer is she's just underwhelming. She can also be a good rescuer, but again, there's just better rescue characters. So Perfumer she is a fairly strong character, but she's not as strong as she used to be, unfortunately, and she does get countered by chip hunters as well, like Sculptor and Bonbon, and that's what makes her a B tier survivor. The best character in B tier, but still B tier. Okay, moving on to the next tier, which is A- tier. The first character in A- tier is Explorer. Now, Explorer he used to be like a really bad character and a lot lower on the tier list, but he did get a buff a while back, and he kind of just went in and around higher tier to lower tier, and kind of being bad and good and whatever. But right now, Explorer, I would say, is around A-. He is a decoder that is somewhat unchaseable in that he can't get found. It's not like he's a good kiter, so he's unchaseable or whatever. It's not that. It's that he can't really get found, because you can actually counter quenching effect as Explorer. If you go into small mode when the hunter has quenching effect up, they cannot see the Explorer if he's in small mode. The only way you can actually see Explorer is if you have wanted order on him, but to get wanted order, you have to chase a different survivor and share a different survivor, which means you're not chasing the main decoder early on, and that's also a 1 in 3 chance that you're actually hitting wanted order on the Explorer anyways. So Explorer is good in that he's a decoder that cannot really get found, but he's not quite as consistent. He's still pretty consistent, but he's a little bit less consistent than some other decoders, because sometimes he's a little bit luck based, and that's if his pages spawn close to him, that's very good. But if his pages spawn really far away from him, then that can be a really big problem. Because for example, say your pages spawn like 90-something footsteps away, then that's really bad. But they spawn right next, like 30-something footsteps away, that's very good. And you can promote Cypher very quickly by getting those pages very, very fast. And Explorer can also mind game hunters into thinking they have more time left than they actually do. Say there's like 3 ciphers left, but say Explorer has like 2 password pages and 3 of the ciphers are at 50. He can immediately just go pop 2 of them, and the last cipher is already 50% of the way and on its way to being primed, and all of a sudden the hunter has no time left to work with when they thought they had more, right? So that can be a pretty nice thing about Explorer. He can also, if the hunter's within a certain range, he can see the hunter with the red marker, which is pretty good. You can communicate to your teammates where the hunter is and where they're going. And you can also waste a lot of time with Explorer. If the hunter if a hunter knows their spawns, they go to an area where a survivor spawns, and they spend a lot of time looking for the Explorer and never find you, then that gives a lot of time for the rest of the team to freely decode while the Explorer stays hidden. So because of these things, Explorer is A minus tier, not a bad character overall, and a little bit inconsistent, but not too inconsistent compared to some of the lower tiered characters, and that's what makes him A minus tier. The next character in A minus tier is Toy Merchant. Now, Toy Merchant, I know Alien had Toy Merchant a lot higher. I know he really loves Toy Merchant, but the biggest problem with Toy Merchant is that she's just currently I believe there's just better support characters than Merchant. Merchant's also very map specific. Like, she's not good on Arms Factory, she's not good on Church. She's pretty good on maps like Ever Sleeping Town, like Sacred Heart Hospital, but you have to get those catapults perfectly right for them to work. So, you know, so with Toy Merchant, like, she's not that bad. She has good support, and she also has that glider, which is really strong. If you jump out of a 2-story building, you can glide away, and you can also jump on your glider and glide to really strong kiting areas, and that can be very hard for hunters. But in reality, there's just a little bit better support characters. And if you notice, Toy Merchant doesn't really get used as much in China anymore as well. She started to get used a little bit for some points, but she wasn't used too much. I don't really recall her being used a lot in COA qualifiers for China at all. So, yeah, she's just not... The support is not quite as viable as some other support characters like Entomologist, like Batter, stuff like that. So that's what makes Toy Merchant A minus tier. She can be a good rescuer as well, though, because she can jump on her catapult, fly all the way up to chair, and get all the way to chair uninjured. Which is pretty good. And it's not like she has a 1-second animation of getting off Boar as Wildling, so she can immediately just get a rescue off and surprise a hunter that way. But yeah, besides that, the catapult's support is strong, but it's not as strong as some other support characters. The glider is good as well, but the hunter, it's similar to Weeping Clan. You can trail the glider, and as soon as the Toy Merchant drops down, they have to put themselves in a good area. If they don't, then the hunter can just get a free hit. And yeah, Toy Merchant's a good support character and a pretty good kiter as well, and can also rescue. So she's pretty good in all three of the strong categories, which is rescuing, kiting, and supporting. And because she's not like super strong in all of them, and she's not like A+ or S tier, but since she is pretty strong in all of them, that makes her a solid A- tier survivor. The next survivor in A- tier is Painter. Now, Painter is the biggest issue with Painter is that he gets countered by hunters hunters can simply just look around the painting. They don't have to look at the painting. They can just kind of walk around it. And that's the biggest problem with him, is that hunters, they can just change the camera angle and look around, which is not too bad. But how do I explain this? Sorry, I'm kind of sorry. I've been talking so much, I'm starting to lose my train of thought here. If the painting is used properly, you kind of have to surprise the hunters by dropping it when they're not expecting it, so they don't have time to look away. You can also put it in narrow alleyways where it's hard for them to look around it as well. Also, you can kind of run around the painting until they're forced to look at it, but you got to be careful about that as well, because they can just blindly swing and sometimes clip you if you're too close to them. So yeah, so that's the biggest problem with Painter is hunters can look around it. But if you are able to get that painting off and get that painting stun, it's a good stun. It's about it's like the 3-stack for an Enchantress. It gains you distance. Again, the biggest part of this meta for survivors is transition kiting and gaining distance, which is something that Painter is good at doing if you're able to get that stun off with the painting. On top of that, he also has that chair time, which if you rescue at any point, then he continues from that chair time in which he was rescued, which is actually really strong. Because that can, you can rescue early if you need to, you can rescue late if you need to, you can rescue after half, and Painter's still not going to be dead on chair, which gives you extra time to decode before the hunter can change targets to somebody new. So because of these things, Painter is a solid A- tier character, and not a bad kiter overall, and pretty solid character. The next character in A- tier is Prospector. Now, Prospector is a strong kiter. He can also support. So the biggest problem with some Prospectors when people are newer to playing Prospector is that they tend to over-support as Prospector. Prospector decodes at a normal speed, and you want to take advantage of that as much as possible. It's not like it's a harasser like Forward or Batter that decodes slower. Prospector decodes at a normal speed, and that's what makes him a good character, because he can Cypher Rush and also be a support and good kiter. So he's a good kiter because he has those magnets. You can repel and attract the hunter into objects and stun them. If a survivor kites by a Prospector Cypher, it's good for the Prospector to go for maybe only one it's usually good to go for just one magnet, just to buy the survivor a little bit of distance. Don't go for too many, because you don't want to accidentally give a free hit or slow down your Cypher Rush too much. Also, Prospector is good in the late game when the Cypher Machines are almost primed. You can use your magnets to stun the Hunter, maybe help the Survivor struggle. Of course, the Hunters can easily counter Prospector stuns by just dropping the Survivor, but if you're able to force it to drop them 3 times, then they can usually struggle free. Or 2 times if they're far away from a chair. So that's the good thing about Prospector is in the late game as well, he can act as a harasser. If, like, say the Cypher Machine's 80% of the way done, almost primed, Prospector can stun the Hunter a few times and get them to drop and buy them enough time to prime the Cypher and pop it, and then you can win the game or something that way. On top of that, Prospector is a good kiter because when he goes by a metal object like a locker or a cipher, it is an 80-second cooldown, but when the cooldown is up, you get a really massive speed boost, which is really beneficial for Prospector and can really mess with the Hunter. So it's happened to me quite often. So yeah, so Prospector is a good character in those things as well. And he's just good at kiting Hunters with small hitboxes because you can repel them easily before they get that hit off you. So overall, Prospector is a good kiter and a pretty good support character as well. In some instances, he's a good support character, and that's what makes him an A- tier survivor. The next survivor in A- tier is Coordinator. Now, Coordinator is a good all-around in that she's a good kiter, she's a good rescuer, she's a good decoder because, you know, she's a rescuer that decodes at a normal speed. Of course, until someone's placed on chair, then it gets slower, but she can still decode at a pretty strong speed, you know, before someone gets put on chair. So she's a good kiter, she's a good rescuer, she has increased vaulting speed, she has a flare gun to help her kite, she has increased chair time as well, 10% longer, which is also really good. So it's not always the best to chase a Coordinator. The biggest problem with Coordinator is Hunters will typically go to a Coordinator, bait out their flare gun early, and then leave them. And then because of this, Coordinators like to save their flare gun. But guys, I promise you, do not save your flare gun for a rebound kite. A lot of Coordinators people who are newer to Coordinator will sometimes save their flare gun for a potential rebound kite or later game. But guys, use your flare gun early if you have to, even if it means wasting it. You guys do not want to go down without using your flare gun because again, the first kite is so important. If you're forcing your teammates to stop decoding and go for a rescue, then you're losing decoding progress. You want to be able to Cypher Rush as quickly as possible early on, and that's what makes first kite so important. So if you're using Coordinator, guys, use that flare gun stun early on if possible. So yeah, so Coordinator is just a solid A- tier character, good kiter, good rescuer. She can also support if someone kites near her Cypher, she can shoot the Hunter, give that person kiting more distance as well, and that's what makes her a solid A- tier survivor. The next survivor at A- tier is Gravekeeper. Now, Gravekeeper, I think I had him as A+ recently, but he's kind of dropped to A- because again, the biggest problem with Gravekeeper is I'm a little biased towards Grave because I do love Gravekeeper and I do play him a lot, but I still I think A- is a solid position for him. The biggest problem with Gravekeeper is that he feeds presence to the Hunter, and a lot of Hunters thrive on presence. For example, Sculptor loves the presence. Once they get to those full presence statues, they're very hard to dodge even after the nerf. Bon, really good with the full presence bombs because they recharge quicker and they have longer range. Axe Boy slows down the survivors when they leave the corrupt zone. I think all you guys know how annoying that can be. So, you know, that's the biggest problem with Gravekeeper is he feeds presence, but he also is a good rescuer because he can usually get up to the chair uninjured. If a Hunter cuts you off from a distance as Gravekeeper, they're forced to knock you out of shovel. And if they're doing that, then they're going into attack recovery. As long as they're not chip on, they're going into attack recovery. And it makes it so you can go to the chair and get the rescue. Also, when Gravekeeper jumps out of shovel for 5 seconds, he has 50% increased rescue speed, which makes it very hard for him to actually get terror shocked. Gravekeeper is a very consistent rescuer in that it's unlikely for him to get terror shocked. The biggest problem is that he just feeds presence. So he may be a good rescuer and a consistent rescuer. He feeds presence, and that's what makes him A- overall. But still a good kiter, still a good rescuer, and just barely A-, almost A+ tier, but just barely A-. The best character in A- though, still. Okay, moving on to the next tier, which is A+ tier. The first character in A+ tier is Little Girl. Now, Little Girl is this character, when she first came out, obviously we all know was just really broken. She was like S tier, one of the best characters in the game, and then NetEase kind of nerfed her pretty hard, which I think is reasonable. She was ridiculously strong in a game that's already survivor sided, so I think it's definitely reasonable for this nerf that happened to her. So basically, the first one was that once she was rescued from a chair, even without Tide Turner, you still had to wait 20 seconds before combining with someone. And then there was at that point, she was still S tier. She was still really strong. And then she got another nerf where if you are combined with a survivor and that survivor gets hit, then you'll immediately detach. And you can't combine for another 20 seconds, which I think is reasonable. I think that pushed her down to you know, mid to low A tier, which I think is probably, or sorry, A plus tier. She's still very strong. You know, just the ability to combine with a survivor. You know, you can just take a hit, combine with a survivor, and you're good. Or, you know, say you're going against Breaking Wheel, you get 2 spikes in you, you combine with, I don't know, like the Mercenary or something, and the Breaking Wheel can't do anything about it. That's really strong. So, you know, as long as you have enough rescuers like Mercenary and 4 good kiters, you can combine with them and they can kite for you, which is perfectly fine. On top of that, you can use your pages while combined with a survivor. You also have naturally good kiting skills with those pages. It's like, you know, a Prospector repel ability, which is just very strong. So she naturally has good kiting as it is. On top of that, she can also teleport. If she gets a bad spawn and you know the hunter's probably going to you, you can immediately just teleport away to one of the survivors, which is really strong. She's also good against Dream Witch, because if you can get out, if the Dream Witch switches off of her leech even for a second, you don't have heartbeat, you can use that time to just teleport away. So she's also good against Dream Witch because of that. So because of everything, she is A plus tier. I think she might even be a little bit higher in A plus tier than I have her, but currently I have her at the bottom of A plus tier. Still very, very strong character, and could be utilized in upcoming tournaments. We'll have to see. The next character in A plus tier is Postman. Now, Postman is really strong because he's a good kiter. He's a good kiting character. He's like a containment type, in that he has that Postman dog, which, you know, can be used to gain distance. Again, transition kiting is so key. So you can gain distance with that Postman dog. You can also support if someone kites by them. You can, you know, drop the Postman dog on them. You can also give them support letters like vaulting letters and whatever, rescue letters. Those aren't typically as strong. The strongest letter that Postman has is the decoding letter. The ability to make one of your characters on your team decode 20% faster for a period of time is just really good. So, for example, if you have a Mercenary on your team, you give the Mercenary the decoding letter, they decode 5% slower than normal at that point, almost as fast as a regular decoder, which is really strong because Postman, again, we talk about Postman can act as a decoding character because we talk about characters that are decoders that can use their abilities while kiting or while rescuing or something. Postman can give a letter, a decoding letter, while kiting, or can give a decoding letter while rescuing. So you can promote Cypher Rush as Postman while not even decoding, which is what makes a character good. Characters that can promote Cypher Rush while not decoding are usually considered to be the good decoding characters, and that's why Postman's good. He's a good support character, he's a good kiter, and is just very strong overall, and that's what makes him an A plus tier character. On top of that, he also has the gate opening letter, which helps open the gates. Exit gates already open ridiculously fast, but he can make it go even faster, which is very strong. The dungeon letter isn't usually as good because if you're in 4-person VC, you can communicate to your teammates where dungeon is, and everyone will know anyways. But, you know, maybe if you're in solo queue or something, then you want to give a decoding letter to a teammate who's, you know, one of your random teammates who's kiting, they'll know where dungeon is, and maybe they can clutch up dungeon that way. So, yeah, because of this incredible support from Postman plus strong kiting, this makes him an A plus tier character. The next character in A plus tier is Patient. Now, Patient used to be around A plus or S tier, but he did receive a nerf. I think it was about a season or two ago, where his hook range was kind of shortened, which does suck a little bit and made him a little bit weaker. But he's still good in that he has the ability to still hook onto broken kiting areas. So, for example, if you're kiting on Leo's memory, you can hook yourself up the stairway into the upstairs factory and 2-story. You can hook yourself into Sacred Heart Hospital, like into the hospital through the birdcage. You have a lot of broken hook areas that can counter a lot of hunters and make hunters go really long distances to catch up to you, or potentially even make them switch targets, which as a Patient is really strong. So, you know, as a kiter is really strong. On top of that, Patient can also be a good rescuer. You can hook yourself close to chair and make it so, you know, you can get all the way up to the chair without being injured at all. And you can't really get cut off as a Patient. Mercenary is a little bit better because Mercenary can just straight elbow pad and you don't have to worry about getting your hook canceled. And can also take that extra, has that delayed effect. But Patient can still act similar to, is almost as strong as Mercenary in that matter. He also decodes faster than Mercenary, 25% faster, which makes him you know, stronger in terms of decoding, not in terms of rescuing, but still very strong nonetheless. So Patient is a good kiter on a lot of maps. He's also can be a good rescuer as well and decodes at a pretty good speed. So because of these things, Patient is a solid A plus tier character. And also, as you know, goes well with Psychologist because they can pull each other towards themselves, and they make a good pairing in rank and tournament gameplay. The next character in A plus tier is that Psychologist. And Psychologist, again, we'll you know, just real briefly brush over the fact that, you know, if you're with a Patient, you can gain distance, you can transition kite well by, you know, zoom in towards the Patient with that ability, which is very good. On top of that, Psychologist can take a guaranteed 3 hits. which is really strong. And any character that can sort of break the game, which, you know, make it so you have an ability that gives you more than you typically would normally have, which in this case is taking 3 hits. Most characters can only take 2 hits, but the fact that you can break the game in a manner of speaking and take 3 hits makes that very strong. So that's very good against single hit hunters like Geisha, Dream Witch, Bloody Queen, even something like Axe Boy. Even Sculptor's not bad because you can just run in the open and force basic hits. If you run in the open, dodge statue, and force basic hits, that's very good. Bon she can struggle against. She can struggle against Bon. Besides that, she's good against most hunters. And on top of that, she can also heal from across the map. Sure, she can take damage in the process, but still, the ability to heal a teammate from across the map sometimes is more valuable than you taking, you being at full health. Sometimes it's more valuable for that teammate to get healed. For example, if they're dead on share or something like that, it's just very strong. And because of these things, Psychologist, she can also rescue 3 hits. It's hard to stuff a character that can take 3 hits unless you're getting terror shocked. If you're not getting terror shocked, you're probably not stuffing Psychologist. And because of these things, Psychologist is a solid A+ tier character. Okay, so the next character in A+ tier is my personal favorite, actually the one that I've been playing a lot recently, which is Entomologist. Now, Entomologist has some of the best support in the game with those bees. You can simply put those bees, you can put the bees in alleyways, you can put them in entrances to certain, any narrow area that the hunter has to go through, you can put your bees there and you can make it so the, the hunter has to kill the bees or walk through them before they can catch up to the survivor, and they get slowed down so much, and it gains your teammate distance. Not only can you support your teammate to give them distance, maybe your teammate's playing a kiter that's naturally not as strong as transition, maybe they're playing Seer, which doesn't really have any direct transitioning abilities. Entomologist can help with that by pushing the hunter back with those bees and gaining them distance. On top of that, she can also kite very well herself. She rides the bees. When she rides the bees, she's a little bit slower than the hunter, but so little that it takes the hunter so long to actually catch up to the Entomologist, and you can loop areas for so long as Ento with that ability. On top of all of that, she also can use her bees when somebody's going for a rescue. So say, for example, if you're Mercenary going in for a rescue, you can bring the Entomologist bees in, push the hunter back as they go for the save, and they can get a free save off. Or if the hunter hits the Mercenary with attack recovery, or whoever's rescuing, for example, if they hit anyone with attack recovery, while they're in attack recovery, you can use those bees to push the hunter far away, and the hunter can't move till the attack recovery is completed. You can push them into a corner, hold them there until they kill the bees, and it's just so hard for the hunter to re-catch up to that survivor that was rescued, and they can easily rebound kite with Entomologist support. A fun play you can also do is a forward goes for a stun, stuns the hunter. While they're stunned, you can just push the hunter back while they're stunned, and the survivor can get so much distance. So because of these things, Entomologist is a high A+ tier character, almost S tier, but not quite there. Very good supporter, very good kiter. And that's what makes her, and still decodes at a normal speed, and even makes it so pallets and windows she vaults, anyone who vaults them vaults 10% faster, which is just even better. So she's just really strong overall, and that makes her an A+ tier survivor. The next survivor in A+ tier is Acrobat. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, Gummy Mike could not quite put them in S tier, but still Acrobat S tier, A+ tier, still very strong. The best character in A+ tier, just barely not S tier. We actually see Acrobat being one of the most played characters in China. If you guys notice, before Acrobat's buff, in tournaments at least, it was available in ranks. A lot of China players actually played Acrobat in rank, and then once the buff went through, we see a lot in tournament. We even see Acrobat get banned sometimes in some of the China qualifiers, because Acrobat is just such a strong kiter. Now you have the ability to charge up your bomb, create a lot of distance between you and the hunter. Before, Acrobat could just throw the bomb, and you didn't really create a lot of distance, the hunter could still hit you. But now the fact that you can literally charge and create distance, you can just completely avoid hits that way. On top of that, you can throw the slow bomb or the firebomb in narrow areas where the hunter has to walk through them. They lose their abilities, or they lose speed as well. You can throw the interaction speed bomb in windows. For example, church window on red church. If a hunter goes through that, they have to vault it, and they get slowed down significantly. So there's just a lot of things, a lot of tools Acrobat has available to themselves. They also decode at a regular speed, which is very useful. They can farm some of their balls back when rescuing, decoding, or kiting. They can also be a decent rescuer themselves. If they go for a rescue against a good camping hunter like Bon, you could try to drop a flame bomb on them, cancel their bombs, and get a free rescue that way because they can't bomb you. So yeah, Acrobat just has a lot to work with. He's also incredibly strong on Moonlight River Park because you can jump over those platforms at 4-stop, over those railings, and the hunters have to walk all the way around. A lot of hunters, some parts of Moonlight River Park, Acrobat's literally unchaseable for certain hunters, and that's what makes Acrobat the best character in A+ tier. Gets banned sometimes in China gameplay and is one of the most used character in China as well currently. Yeah, Acrobat, A+ tier. Okay, moving on to our final tier, which is S tier. The first character in S tier is still S tier, even after the nerfs, still S tier, and that is Mechanic. And the reason why Mechanic is still S tier is because she may not be much of a winning character anymore, but she is the best character in the game for securing a draw. If you're in a tournament setting and you need to get a draw as a survivor side, just go Mechanic. Mechanic is really good at securing draws. Yes, if your doll goes down, the second time you drop the doll, it will never be able to finish a Cypher Machine because of how slow its decoding is, unless it's finishing one that already has progress on it. But if you're able to die with your doll in play, it'll still do an entire Cypher Machine for free, and it'll put yourself in a drawing position. Sure, Mechanic is a weak hider. She'll probably go down very quickly, but the Cypher Rush from the bot, as long as bot remains in play, is still a very good draw character. If you're going for a win as survivors, maybe Mechanic isn't used quite as much for going for wins anymore because the Cypher Rush isn't as fast, but it's still enough to get draws, and that's what makes Mechanic. It's as simple as that. Mechanic has the ability to decode with bot while rescuing, while kiting, while sitting on chair, while sitting on the ground, and that's what makes her the best decoder. The fact that you can decode under any circumstance as Mechanic makes her very good. Yes, there's the weakness of that. When people are injured, she naturally will decode slower because of her nerf, because of her debuff, but she still has, as long as the bot's in play, she still has the ability to decode a very fast speed. Even if Mechanic gets chased first, that's fine for survivors. You're still probably drawing the game because bot's in play. And because of these things, Mechanic is S tier. Just the straight up ability to have a very, very good chance at securing a draw when necessary. That's what makes Mechanic good, and that's what makes her S tier. Okay, the next character in S tier, this is a little bit of a stretch, but I think this character deserves to be here, and that is Batter. I think Batter is really, really strong right now. Batter counters a lot of hunters, is a very good harasser. Harassing and support is a huge part of the meta right now, guys, and since Forward gets banned a lot because Forward is the best character in the game, spoiler for the rest of the video, but still, Batter is very, very strong. And Batter is the second best harasser after Forward. Batter can literally Batter counters a lot. He's very good harasser against Geisha, against Breaking Wheel. He can be good against Sculptor in some instances. He can be good against Bonbon, because Bonbon and Anne can actually just cat the Batter and then just cancel their abilities. But Batter at least has a little bit more of a chance because he can technically try to dodge the cats. But he's a better harasser against Bonbon because Bonbon can just drop bombs around where they're picking up the survivor and the Forward can't stun. But the Batter can still stun from a distance. The difference between Batter and Forward is Batter stuns from a distance and Forward does not. So in some instances, Batter can even be better. Batter can also stun on chair like Forward. He can use his Rage Mode ability and stun on chair. On top of that, Batter also, when in Rage Mode, he can vault pallets faster and windows faster, which is very good. And he can also make his cooldown non-existent for using 2 balls in a row. If you use a ball right away and say you miss it, or maybe the hunter didn't pick up, or you had to waste it or whatever, you can instantly just use your Rage Mode and cancel your cooldown right away. And you can use 2 balls in a row because of that, whereas Forward's football is always going to have a cooldown. Batter can immediately prevent that cooldown. On top of that, Batter is also a strong kiter. Again, vaults pallets faster and windows faster, throws pallets faster, and can also be good at transitioning because you can push the hunter back. And another reason why he's getting against Geisha is because if she dashes, just knock them back. You can knock them out of their dash. You can also knock Anne out of their jump, but a lot of Anns will curve around, which can be very difficult. But I think the biggest downside, why Forward's technically a better kiter, because Forward can football away from a Bloody Queen mirror, whereas Batter, it's hard for them to deal with a BQ mirror. You can try to push the main body, but a lot of BQs will be patient and mirror at the right time, so it's hard for them to push away. But overall, Batter is a good rescuer, a good kiter, and an excellent harasser, and I believe that's what makes Batter an S-tier character. We also see Batter get used a lot more in China and a lot more in rank as well for both NAU and China. The next character in S tier is Seer, and also just a good Batter is just really hard to deal with. It's just incredibly hard to deal with. Sorry, I just had to add that in. Sometimes you have to bring excitement for a really good Batter when you don't really want to. Okay, anyway, so moving on to the next character in S tier, which is Seer. Seer, after he got his nerf, he got pushed down a little bit because of that. He used to be the second best character in the game, besides obviously forward, where, just making a survivor immune to hits for 15 seconds, essentially. Not quite immune because they could get chipped off, but for the most part, immune for 15 seconds is just so strong. Making it so the first kiter on your team can take 3 hits is basically what Seer does. And that's just so good. Now, the biggest problem now with Seer is that obviously hunters can just bait out the owl, wait 8 seconds, because now it's 8 seconds instead of 15, and then you can hit the owl that way. So that does knock Seer down a little bit, but he still makes them really, really strong. Seer's also a good kiter in that you can farm an owl while kiting as well, and can also, again, take up to 3 hits. So, just that owl can be used in so many instances. It can also be used for rescue. Say you're going for a rescue against a bonbon or a sculptor, you can give owl to the rescuer, so you make it so they can take an extra chip before they go down, because the owl can absorb a chip for you. So that's also pretty strong. So on top of all that, Seer can see where the hunter is at the start of the match and where they're going. Again, that's not too important if you know your key spawns, but if you know your spawns as survivors. But overall, it's still pretty useful to have, I guess. Seer can actually see the hunter at some points during the match as well. If you catch a glimpse of them, they'll stay highlighted for a few seconds, and you can see them and where they're going throughout the match, which can also be good. But for the most part, the Seer owl is so strong. Seer's not really the most number 1 banned survivor. A lot of people have started to ban Priestess and Forward and Mercenary a little bit more, but Seer still gets banned. One of the most banned survivors for sure. And Dreamwitch will still always ban Seer first because it's so hard for them to deal with that owl. So because of these things, Seer is S tier. Not quite the best character in the game, but still towards the top and one of the best characters in Identity 5. Okay, moving on to the next character in S tier, and that is Mercenary. Mercenary, still an incredibly strong rescuer with a delayed effect. I mean, there's not much to say about Mercenary. You guys kind of all know. Mercenary is unchaseable for the most part because he has 3 elbow pads. He can easily transition away from hunters. He has 10% increase time on the rocket share, and he also has a delayed effect when hit, which means it takes him even longer to go down. So Mercenary can just waste so much time if you chase him. So I encourage you guys, if you're newer to Hunter, don't chase Mercenary. Leave him for other targets. I promise you it's better to go to other targets. Mercenary is also an incredibly strong rescuer because he has that delayed effect. So even if you get terror shocked, you can still make the save, or even if you take enough hits from a hunter in which you would typically go down, you can still make the rescue. Of course, you don't want to be in that situation. You don't want to get double hit because then Mercenary will go down later once that effect wears off, and he takes a long time to heal, which means Cypher Rush is not being promoted, but he still is one of the best rescuers because it's very, very difficult to actually stuff a Mercenary. And he also promotes rotation because, again, if the hunter finds Mercenary first, they're forced to leave them and go to a new target. And if you're in 4-person VC, the Mercenary can communicate to your teammates, oh, the hunter's leaving me and going in this direction, so the survivors can leave their ciphers early so they don't get found or hide or whatever it may be. And it can be very hard to find new survivors that way. So Mercenary is just very strong because he's very unchaseable and is a very, very strong rescuer. One of the best rescuers in the game, and that's why he is an S-tier survivor. He can also go in for rescues against single hit hunter, like non-chip hit hunters at half health. For example, he can go in for 2 rescues against something like Geisha or Bloody Queen or Dream Witch, which can all be very, very strong in a lot of instances. Okay, 2 more characters left. The next character in S tier is Priestess. Now, Priestess is very good. I think we all kind of hate Priestess as a hunter because she's very good on certain maps. For example, Sacred Heart Hospital, Ever Sleeping Town, Chinatown. She's good in pretty much, I'll be honest, she's good on every map except for Arms Factory. And Priestess is just very strong because she literally has the ability to just completely escape the hunter and stun the hunter at the same time and create distance with those portals. She can also, let's just go through all Priestess abilities. She has portals which help her kite. She has portals which can help the person who's kiting. You can support the kiter that way. She has the ultra long portal, which we call the world portal, which can go across the entire map, and the Priestess doesn't even leave an after image, so she can easily just escape the hunter that way. She also makes it so she also heals faster and makes it so teammates heal faster as well. She can heal people faster. It's just, she has so much going for herself. It's just so strong. The biggest downside is that, of course, her vaulting speed's like 10% slower or whatever, but that's not even too bad compared to all the bonuses she has besides that. So just think about it. If you're a Dream Witch and you're trying to trap in a survivor with a leech and the main spawn and they just portal away, or you're a Bloody Queen in Ever Sleeping Town and you're trying to mirror someone, they just portal through a building and you just lose your mirror or whatever. They just do a long portal like that. Or just like pretty much any hunter. You're a breaking wheel, you've been chasing this person, you get 2 spikes on them, you get out of wheel for them and they just portal away. And it's just so hard to deal with Priestess's kiting. The reason why Priestess is so good is she has good support, good kiting, and she can also rescue. She can insta-rescue someone with a portal trick, where she puts a portal behind the chair, the hunter goes through them and gets stunned, and you get the rescue that way. You can sometimes even get a rescue off at as half health as Priestess that way. She just has so many things available. She can kite, rescue, and support, and those are three of the most important things in the game as survivors. And yeah, because of all these things, Priestess is S tier. You can also set up situations with your ultra long portal where someone gets rescued with Tide Turner. Even if they take a hit as Tide Turner, they can still make it through the portal. And if the hunter doesn't have teleport, then you can just heal them as the Priestess and get them up. And then now the hunter has to change targets to a new survivor, walk all the way across the map, and it just puts them in a really bad position. But because of all these things, Priestess is actually broken, one of the most annoying characters to go against as a hunter, and is so incredibly strong. Currently the second best character in the game, S tier Priestess. All right, so getting on to the best character in the game, the last character in S tier, and that is Forward. Now, Forward, Forward is the hardest character in the game to play, but a good Forward, someone who has mastered Forward is the most formidable player to go against as a hunter. I pretty much always ban Forward as a hunter because of how hard it is to deal with a good Forward. Forward can literally change games from losses to ties and ties to wins by just having strong support. Forward can, when a survivor goes down, the Forward can harass a whole block, get the survivor to potentially rebound kite, can waste the hunter's time for the rest of the survivors to decode. Forward can harass while someone's kiting. If they kite by the Forward, they can stun the hunter as they walk by, and it gets the survivor more distance. If the survivor who's kiting is at full health takes a hit, after their attack recovery is starting to run out, the Forward can stun to make them, be immobilized even longer. Forward, if injured, can stun rescue on chair. As they chair the survivor in their chair animation, they can stun the hunter and get the rescue that way. Forward just has so much going for them. They're such a strong rescue because Forward is actually, in some instances, believe it or not, even less likely to get stuffed than a Mercenary. Because if you're worried about getting stuffed against like a good hunter, you can just go for a really long stun if you're able to hit it on on the person, on the camping hunter. Then you can just stun them and get the rescue off that way. So if you're able to hit them into a wall. Forwards with good controls as well are just so formidable. Forwards with good game sense are so formidable. Forward is also pretty much unchaseable because of his incredibly fast throwing pallet speed, incredibly fast vaulting speed, and he has that football for transition kiting, and transition kiting again is so strong. I mean, you can literally stun the hunter as they teleport to an exit gate. You can cancel a hunter's teleport. If they teleport on a gate, you can stun them as they appear on the gate and then just get out the exit gate that way. There's just so many things Forward has. He's such a strong supporter, such a strong rescuer. And he may not be like a great decoder, but he can kite, he can support, he can rescue, and he has the best, arguably the best support, the best harassment in the game, arguably the best support in the game, one of the best rescuers in the game, if not the best. He just has so much going for him. There are so many fragile hunters like Breaking Wheel that can struggle heavily against Forward, and that is why Forward is the best character in the game, the #1 character in S tier, and one of the more commonly banned characters, especially in China. Okay, at long last, we finally wrapped up the video. Thank you guys who stuck with us through this one. This is a very long one. Again, timestamps will be in the video description below if you guys want to go back and watch specific parts about specific characters. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys liked the video, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Yeah, I'll see you all in the next one.